सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल दबाएं ताकि कोई खबर रह न जाए।
Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. You're watching Front Page on Bold News. This is me, Moizzur Rahman, and today we will be bringing you news from all across the world. In the program's first segment, we will be focusing on how the diplomatic front continues to get busier for Pakistan, because according to some credible news reports, Pakistan and China are pushing to replace SAARC with a new regional bloc. This is a very, very important and a very interesting development considering the events that have happened in the region in the last few months. And after that, we will be also discussing how the Indian Defence Attaché who is posted in Indonesia accepted that India suffered massive losses after they tirade against Pakistan and after they tried to actually weaken Pakistan, but Pakistan's clinical response ended up completely red-facing India in front of the entire world. So let's get to the detail of our first segment. Tonight, we turn to a major diplomatic shift in South Asia, one that could actually redraw the region's power map. And the story is that Pakistan and China, who are all-weather friends, are quietly preparing to bury SAARC and build something new, replacing the old so-called sluggish forum that barely delivers. And the major reason has been India's involvement in SAARC and how India has always tried to actually sabotage whatever cooperation the SAARC could have actually done. And India's role is the reason why the SAARC has delivered nothing so far. And according to credible diplomatic sources, Pakistan and China are in advanced talks to establish a new regional organization, one that could actually replace the defunct SAARC. Now let's actually invite Dr. Johar Salim, who's a diplomat, and he has been the former ambassador to Italy as well as the Foreign Secretary for Pakistan, in our show and take his comments. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Johar Salim Saab. Johar Saab, my first question to you is, obviously we were talking about SAARC and how there have been credible media reports that now Pakistan and China are actually working together to actually make a new regional cooperation bloc in our region. If I could ask you a question that, before actually going into the details, can you actually tell our viewers that what was the main purpose of SAARC and why did it actually fail to achieve its objectives that it was actually supposed to work on?
It's very unfortunate that SAARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, which was, interestingly enough, was the brainchild of President Ziaur Rahman of Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And of course, Pakistan was very keen to work with Bangladesh and all other countries in the region, and that's how it was set up. But it was an organization with a great promise and potential, because South Asia, as you've rightly said, is a region which now comprises almost 25% of the world population. Every fourth person on the globe lives in South Asia. But all that promise that this region offers has not translated into intra-regional integration. In fact, if anything, South Asia is the least integrated region in the world, with just 5% of the trade of South Asian countries focused on the region itself. The worst part is that, this region is plagued by some festering wounds in terms of those disputes of Jammu and Kashmir, for instance, some water disputes. And now we see a tendency where India has even tried to wriggle out of Indus Waters Treaty. And not just with Pakistan. It's trying to wriggle out of similar treaties with other countries such as Bangladesh, for instance.
Yep.
So this attitude, this irresponsible attitude, this attitude of hubris, this attitude of hegemony, it is the key reason for South Asia not being integrated, and it's the key reason for failure of SAARC. We see that
Yep.
even the meetings of SAARC are not held regularly, and there has been literally nothing has come out of SAARC for so many years now, primarily because of the obstacles that India has created.
Absolutely. And which is very unfortunate. We were talking about India trying to punch above its weight, especially ever since Narendra Modi's regime has come into power. And more or so, his regime doesn't seem more like a government that is actually governing over 1.5 billion people, but it actually looks like an extension of an RSS political office. So with India's hegemonic attitude and its jaundiced view towards regional cooperation, do you think that a new alliance that Pakistan and China are set to make, how big of a loss can it actually, really make to India if they are actually not part of it? And do you think that any new regional cooperation bloc which does not include India, do you think that it can be successful? Because unfortunately, India has actually destroyed whatever we could have actually gotten out of SAARC. But then again, it's one of the biggest countries in the region.
Unlike India, China has been a force for peace in the region. It has been a force for stability. It has been an agent for peace and cooperation. It has tried to build bridges. As you know, BRI, CPAC is a flagship project of BRI. How BRI and other initiatives that China is taking, for example, the initiative of the Global Civilizational Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, the Global Development Initiatives, all these initiatives of which Pakistan is now a signatory of, they are meant to promote cooperation, promote collaboration, promote mutually beneficial linkages. Unlike India, China has never tried to pursue any hegemonic designs.
Absolutely.
And that is why China is widely respected in the region and many countries in South Asia. That not only includes Pakistan, but also Sri Lanka, and also Bangladesh, and also Nepal, and all the other countries, Maldives. You can name any country in South Asia. Except India.
Like if we talk about India, on the other hand, it has a problem with Bangladesh at the moment, Nepal, Bhutan.
The difference is so stark, so obvious in terms of the attitude and the kind of the foreign policy that they're pursuing. I mean, on the one hand, China is pursuing the foreign policy of peace and cooperation. On the other hand, India is pursuing a foreign policy of conflict and discord. And sadly, it's been sort of, it claims to be the biggest democracy in the world. But we know what is happening within India. It is exactly literally a fascist dispensation that we see in India, where they're trying to set up a Hindu Rashtra, so to speak, a Hindu republic, where there's no place for minorities. There is no place for Muslims. There's no place for Christians. There's no place for Sikhs and Zoroastrians, where they want everybody to convert to Hinduism. I mean, you see, this is the ideology and philosophy of hate and division that BJP is pursuing. I think it is not just malicious for the entire region, but for India itself. It has really fomented, and it has really sowed seeds of discord that India in future years will really suffer from.
Absolutely, for decades actually, and bigotry has gone through the roof. One final question, Jawhar Saab, I would like to ask from you is that we talked about India actually unilaterally violating the Indus Waters Treaty. With this kind of attitude of actually this artificial persona they have of supremacy over the others in the region, do you think that India can carry on its merry way, especially after how the 7th May, the entire war they tried to actually rage on Pakistan and the region, and how they actually got red-faced by the entire world? Do you think that India can continue to actually carry on its merry way? And if you could also tell about how pragmatic the Pakistani diplomacy has been in the last few months.
You see, India's position on Indus Waters Treaty is sad. it's a sad reflection of its policies, because the treaty has no provision for unilateral withdrawal or unilateral holding in abeyance. And that has been demonstrated not just by the experts, but also we know by the Court of Arbitration. The Permanent Court of Arbitration has ruled now that the treaty gives full jurisdiction, like before, to the Court of Arbitration on the Kishanganga and Rati Dam projects. And why? Because there is no provision in the treaty for unilateral actions, such as India claims holding the treaty in abeyance. And that's very much an endorsement of Pakistan's official position on that this treaty, the way it was structured, and has no such provisions. And also, this treaty guarantees the stability of the region in terms of food security, in terms of the division of waters as per international law and as per the UN Charter, and as per all the rights and responsibilities that the upper riparian and lower riparian states have. So we have been vindicated, and India's stance has been totally nullified. And this has been evident in the position of all the countries, all the major countries within this region, and of course in the world, who have all called for India's again getting back into the fold of the treaty. In fact, that unilateral holding in abeyance technically doesn't at all, but from a political standpoint, they want India to renounce their that illegal action and state that they are as much part of the treaty as they ever were. And in fact, they should not only abide by the original of the treaty, but they should also, in letter and spirit, abide by the decisions and the rulings of the courts of arbitration.
That is very important, to actually respect all the treaties that have been signed decades ago, and unfortunately India's unilateral attitude to actually sever them is actually a big threat to regional peace as well as global peace. It was lovely talking to you earlier this evening. George Salim Saab, thank you so much for your time, and we will actually continue to discuss this topic in further detail, as this is very, very important, and this can be an instrumental development for the further development of this region in terms of trade and economic cooperation. But now let's take a break, so don't go anywhere. Keep watching Bold News. Welcome back. You're watching Front Page live on Bold News. Let's now talk about a rare moment of truth from New Delhi, as an Indian defense official has finally admitted what Pakistan has long maintained, and the entire world has reported that Indian fighter jets were shot down by Pakistan Air Force during the intense air battle that took place on the 7th of May 2025. Speaking at a defense seminar in Jakarta, Captain Shiv Kumar, who's India's defense attaché, he confessed that we did lose some aircraft. This confession is a huge cemented evidence of what actually Pakistan achieved on the 7th of May, where it actually left India red-faced in front of the world. And slides at the event suggested that India lost 3 Rafales, 1 Sukhoi 30 and 1 MiG-29. These losses have been concealed until now, but now are being confirmed by India's own military. Kumar blamed the losses not on the Indian Air Force, but on political restrictions from India's leadership, which had barred strikes on Pakistan's military and air defenses, according to him. That this actually left Indian jets vulnerable, and Pakistan's Air Force seized the moment, shooting down multiple aircraft in a single night. And this was a humiliation for India that India will continue to actually bear till the rest of this world. And this revelation has actually triggered backlash in India, with critics accusing the Modi government of misleading the public. And actually that is what has been the forte of Narendra Modi, where he has actually misled his support base for nearly a decade now. What is important to tell is that Pakistan not only repelled India's attack, but it exposed India's military vulnerability. And this time the admission has come straight from India's own military ranks. So this is something very massive, and India continues to get exposed. Let's further continue on South Asia only, and let's turn to a very crucial and a diplomatic victory for Pakistan in the long run. The long run dispute over water is going with India, and this is a conflict that not only affects millions of lives but actually goes to the heart of regional stability. In a landmark ruling issued on June 27th, the Permanent Court of Arbitration (PCA) affirmed its full jurisdiction in the matter of the Indus Waters Treaty dispute between Pakistan and India. The supplemental award was issued in response to India's unilateral move to actually hold the treaty in abeyance earlier this year, and India tried to actually wage war over water. This is a move that was widely condemned, and it is legally baseless. What India is doing is a big threat to regional cooperation, global stability, and it is also completely illegal. Pakistan's Foreign Office welcomed the decision, calling it a clear vindication of Pakistan's stance that the Indus Water Treaty remains a valid and operational document, and it's a treaty that is still operational till date and is in effect. The court's ruling makes it plain and simple that India cannot act alone on the treaty or suspend its obligations at will. Now, when we talk about the regional dispute, it was triggered by the Indian hydroelectric projects at Kishanganga and Ratle, and it has been going on since Pakistan formally approached the court earlier in 2016 under the Article 9 of the Indus Water Treaty. The treaty, brokered by the World Bank back in 1960, outlines clear mechanisms for dispute resolution, and no clause permits unilateral withdrawal or abeyance that was done by India. This is a clear illegality pursued by India, and India must be held accountable for that. India, however, carrying on its merry way of its false hegemonic power of the region, it actually suspended the treaty in May earlier this year following a tragic incident in Indian-occupied Kashmir, which New Delhi falsely blamed on Pakistan, and allegation Islamabad has strongly denied as an Indian false flag operation, because India has not produced even a shred of evidence till date. That false accusation and propaganda by India later fueled the most intense fighting between the two countries in decades before a United States brokered ceasefire brought a halt to the hostilities. Actually, the ceasefire, it actually helped India because India was actually getting red-faced in front of the world. Reacting on the court's ruling, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar accused India of trying to weaponize water, calling it a form of water terrorism. Pakistan has declared this as an act of war by India, and Defense Minister Khwaja Asif was even more direct, saying that India's defeat in the arbitration leaves no room for unilateralism, adding pointedly. And he said further that Modi's political days are numbered. And you cannot really disagree with that, because Narendra Modi seems desperate with his warmongering moves. And Khwaja Asif also addressed repeatedly confirming that Indian aircraft losses during the recent conflict, hinting that India itself may have been unaware of the full damage until much later, because the scale of the damage has been so massive across all the parts of India that it can certainly take time to actually assess it, and the court's decision is binding and final. Pakistan has law, diplomacy, and global institutions on its side, while India finds itself increasingly cornered for trying to rewrite the international treaties through force. And as we spoke to Mr. Johar Salim, who has been the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, that India has repeatedly tried to actually bully its way through the region, but now it is failing badly, and it will continue to do so until it actually quits its way of this false hegemonic showdown over the region. So this is a very, very interesting development in the course of the regional geopolitical and regional stability. We will be discussing this topic. Today's show comes to an end. We will inshallah come in another show and discuss what is happening all across the world. Take a lot of care of yourself. Please share your feedback on both social media handles. This is me, Moizer Rahman, signing off. Allah Hafiz.
सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल दबाएं ताकि कोई खबर रह न जाए।